we're really glad that you join us this afternoon, and let me say a few words about myself and the ESG Masters platform. So my name is Sebastian Becker. I'm going to be your host tonight, and I also initiated the ESG Masters platform. What are we going to try and achieve with it? It's quite simple. We all know that we need to change the way how we do business, and it is time to get from, let's say, nice and well-sounding announcements about reaching net zero in different industries in a number of years to operational activities. So that's what we want to achieve with the ESG Masters platform, bring experts, decision makers, and evangelists together to discuss which are the current trends in technology adoption, which technologies do have which outstanding capabilities, and how to orchestrate all of these technologies. So it's about, you could call them efficiency technologies or exponential technologies or impact technologies. There are, of course, various terms to it, but we are not interested in a specific technology. So how AI, blockchain, confidential computing, the cloud, etc., can contribute to achieve an impact, because we all know that apart from energy saving in general and very exciting developments in the area of new fuels and new materials, we will need to get more efficient in everyday's business operations. So our main question is how to save 30 to 40% in the next 5 to 10 years for the day-to-day business operation. And we want to provide a platform to dive deeper into these discussions. So that's why I'm really glad that we have a very interesting lineup today. Professor Jens Strüker will start in a few seconds with his intro presentations, and then in half an hour, we'll start with a panel discussion. This might go on for 30, 35, 40 minutes. Please don't be shy. Post your questions in the chat, and I will call you up and give you the permit to speak and ask your questions. So we will have an open Q&A at the end of the panel, and we will close at 6:30 latest. Of course, this will also be recorded, so I hope everybody is okay with that. And we will not only do webinars, there will be a first physical ESG Masters conference on April 10 and 11 in Munich. And since we are, let's say, a bottom-up movement, we're open to all kinds of ideas, speaker suggestions, topical suggestions, and also, of course, sponsors and partners. So if you think you can contribute, please reach out to us. And today's webinar and to other webinars that we will do in February and March are, of course, meant to not only start a discussion, but also to grow our community. So with that being said, let me give the mic to Jens Strüker. He's the head of the Blockchain Lab at the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. His specific institute is Fraunhofer FIT, but he can tell us a bit more about that, I'm sure. And he's also a professor at the University of Bayreuth, which is 200 kilometers north of where I sit in Munich, and where I hope to see you then in April. So without further ado, Jens, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so thank you for having me, of course. It's quite an honor. And as you said, I'm a professor at the University of Bayreuth, and my discipline is information systems, and it's about digital energy management. So today I want to speak about from carbon counting to carbon management. And as I'm also the head of the Fraunhofer Blockchain Lab, a co-director there, I think it's interesting to hear for you that my team and I, we are mainly addressing now the question, how can we speed up decarbonization by using Web3 technologies? Some call it crypto, blockchain, etc. But it's not only blockchain, of course, it's more than that. Identity management, AI, etc. So how can we make use of these technologies in combination? And I'll talk to you about the twins at first, the twins, digitalization and decarbonization. And if we look at the companies today, two of the main challenges they face today are, one, is digital transformation, and the other one is sustainability transformation. And if we especially focus on, for instance, small and medium-sized enterprises, we see this is very burden for them. So it's a huge challenge with both transformation at the same time. Let's focus just for a second, with people. It's so hard to get people with all the expertise in digital transformation. If you are looking for computer scientists for small and medium-sized enterprises, and of course it's also challenging for larger corporations nowadays, but especially for SMEs in Europe. But then think about the sustainability transformation. Today, you need not only people who are good in or have expertise in sustainability reporting, they also have to know, okay, how can I really process the data? What does it mean? We have so many standardization groups, we have so many different stakeholders, and so on. So it's a large, huge challenge here. And the idea now is, how can we make use of both if we combine that? So are there synergies? And transformation is exactly the answer to that, and enables an organization, and this is at least the purpose, the idea, to overcome the challenges of sustainability and digitalization. So in a nutshell, the idea is that the organization can use both transformation as a stepping stone for innovation and new business models. If we drill here further, we could say that the question remain in our area about, we want to talk about and discuss about carbon management. The question might be here how Web3 technology in particular can positively impact decarbonization and so decarbonization transition of companies and vice versa. And doing this right might end up in a positive feedback loop. And we have seen that before. And I want to start now this feedback loop with looking at the trust gap we face. So trust gap means that when we look at decarbonization in companies today, we can read a lot about greenwashing when it comes to decarbonization initiatives of enterprises, and we see a lot of marketing there, but it's problematic. So one famous example last year was the Vera scandal. It turned out that the carbon offset certificates of this, I think it's still the largest certifier, they were literally without any value. So in large part, at least. And the problem is, of course, greenwashing means that corporate net zero pledges here totally lack credibility. And for companies, this is a problem. Think about risk management in companies. And another famous example here, of course, is greenwashing are the ESG criteria for investors. We have a lot of intransparency and fraud in the system right now. The economists, they call that a market for lemons. So this is economists speak for a situation when good quality product or good quality products leave the market because they cannot differentiate themselves from bad quality. So, and this means in the first example of that in the theory was about the car market. And so they call it lemons. And the consequences might be indeed market failure there. This means that we see that what does that mean for our carbon management in companies? This could mean that crucial and very urgent investments now for decarbonization will not happen. What we wanted to know 2 years ago was, is there really a demand, a need for companies to use primary and verifiable data? So really to fight this greenwashing, to come up with good qualities and data attributes that you can verify. And so we did that study for the think tank EPICO, and also this was sponsored by the European Climate Foundation. And what we found out was first, we wanted to better understand the status quo. That is, how do companies today really collect data, and what are here the different ways. And the result was, today this is mostly, so the data gathering is mostly a manual process. CO2 data is, if at all, stored in silos. And another interesting point was that it cannot be digitally transferred, or it's not the rule, at least. And during a year, different people in a company from different units collect similar data. We found that very often in large companies. And overall, the CO2 emissions that are part of the sustainability reports today are more or less based on very fuzzy and blurred data sources. So primary data, this means data that you really measure, that you can really prove to somebody else, is definitely the exception, not the rule. This means emissions are not accurately quantified, let alone exactly reported. And this is bad news, because companies are facing a lot of new regulatory and market requirements in the future, when it comes at least to sustainability data. And this means that they have to come up with additional and better data to conduct these actual documentation. We have here a lot of examples. Think about the supply chain law. We already have that in Germany in place. We have a European one coming online. At least we have to think that this will happen. To sum up here, I mean, the data requirements are growing literally exponentially. So simply scaling up the current approach is not feasible. And if we look at the situation here, this means we have primary data. We have to think about, we have to get this data. So it's a simplification here, of course. Yeah. But then we have, in a way, with different approaches, different standards, different stakeholders there. But this next level would be the environmental assessment in general. So that's the semantic level, so to speak. And then on top, you have, of course, what does it mean in economic terms, in monetary terms? You know? And the interesting thing is that this abstraction layer seems to be pretty simple, but I'm not aware of a lot of companies that really live to that. You know? And this means when we really want to do carbon management, we need a really good basis, and this means primary data. And then you have the degree of freedom to manage, to do your business, daily business. But for this, you need definitely primary data, and that's where I think we should start with carbon management in companies. And this brings me, of course, then to the solution part, meaning that people want to solve the trust challenge. This is definitely an approach you can do with technology. And then the starting point is getting rid of trust. Harry Truman once said, if you cannot solve a problem, simply make it bigger. So, and I would say that we and many others see the solution in digital verification of exactly this primary data. And instead of trusting in aggregated, estimated, and often faulty data labels, we think that primary data, if we can verify that, it becomes scalable. So our starting point for digital proofs are, in a nutshell, are digital identities. You know that we face a lot of challenges with digital identities today. This goes back to the very beginning of the internet. Digital identity means in the internet, who is there? Who are you talking to or communicating to? In the internet, we do not have this inbuilt identity layer. This means we simply do not know who's participating. This is a kind of imperfection, or was an imperfection from day zero. And in Web 2.0, we could live with single password management and workarounds. And one of these workarounds was this single sign-on approach. It's very famous, but this meant and still means you give all your identity data to the big internet platforms. And well, yeah, I mean, in a world with billions of devices connected to the internet, and definitely in the industry, it is not scalable and not feasible. So a nice solution are self-sovereign identities. This approach has already led to a standard by the World Wide Web Consortia. SSI, at least from my perspective, is maturing quite quickly. It's being tested in many public and also private projects, sector projects. And if you're interested in those, drop me a line. So the key takeaway here is SSI allows individuals, organizations to control their digital identity. So your data without depending on any centralized authority. Of course, you need a kind of trust, and still somebody, you shift the trust to the edge. Somebody has to implement trust here, of course, but then you can digitally, on a bilateral way, transfer trust. So users hold here digital credentials and so on. And blockchain can also play a role, but I think that's only, it's a side note. It's not crucial for our understanding here. So let me come to the next slide. My point is, if we combine different web technologies, Web3 technologies, we can design a really neat carbon emission tracing system and a digital product passport. We have here an example for electricity. It's a paper. It's just an example, and our solution here was guarantees of origin for electricity, and we combined shielded fractional NFTs with off-chain bilateral data exchange, and this way we can provide verifiable CO2 emission data along an entire supply chains. We also use zero-knowledge proofs to address a privacy issue. This is, I think, pretty important, or privacy, or to better call it data sovereignty. And yeah, if you're interested in that too, you can drop me a line as well, and I can send you a couple of papers, and we can discuss this. But the main message here is we can enable anonymous transaction and also ensure compliance with computational integrity, and that's pretty cool. So I have to say that. Yeah, but if we put now all these elements together, we see that companies, and there are more approaches, of course, but this is ours here. Companies can use verified data on their CO2 emissions. And this means digital tracking, tracing, and verifying technologies for CO2 are a promising lever, I think, to accelerate decarbonization. Yet at the same time, enterprises save manual labor and costs. Good. at least. So they get better access to capital and workforce. That's a hope. And yeah, that's it's. I try to put those messages in one presentation. You understand that there are a lot of more details to explain, but I think that's the main part. If we want to come to the carbon management, I think there's no way around really primary data, to digitalize these data, to exchange that, to make this verifiable. And just one example, what are the challenges to carbon management here? How can we, what can we do as citizens, as business people, or even as states here? I think that manual approaches here are not really convincing, as I described already, but the situation today, if we think about how can we make use of, how can we better share data? Yeah? I think it makes sense to think more abstractly about master data and transaction data. So when it comes to transaction data, we all know examples like, oh, I want to see, I mentioned electricity and what was the consumption of a company from, or in a month. But the other thing is master data. So if we want to see digital end-to-end connections, and we want to prove that, for instance, with a digital passport for electricity, what I gave you an example for that. This means we see a large focus today on sharing transaction data between parties, and that's good, of course. Think about, for instance, the car industry with Catena X, so data spaces. This is mainly for transaction data. But on the other side, we do not have to forget the master data. So master data could mean a people, a person, address, age, etc., but also, of course, machine data. And this means what kind of machine are we talking to? An e-vehicle is a good example. Think of a car coming from Belgium and going to Bavaria. So can you keep your electricity tariff when charging in Germany? With your mobile, that goes without saying. With your car, no. In the electricity sector, there is no master data in the electricity system for a car. They do not know a car. So we have to combine, have to connect different registries, people for persons, but also for machine identities, if we want to make use of really end-to-end digitalization. And I think with to come back to this example here with electricity and e-vehicles, if you have your car and you charge that with green electricity, so from a rooftop in a company, and you want to make use of that electricity and get it back in time when you say, okay, I have a customer here and I have to fulfill certain requirements when it comes to CO2 for a product in the car industry. This is already the case. Then you could make use of this CO2 to compensate or to fulfill these criteria. And again, then you have to prove that from end to end. And this is exactly the point here. So we have to digitalize, we have to modernize our registries in Europe. This was my point with master data. We have a lot of more homework to do, of course, but this is at least one thing we often do not focus on. So thank you for your attention. And yeah, I think it's your turn again, Sebastian.
Thanks a lot, Jens. Relax, take a sip, and yeah, you're a bit in the back of your screen. Maybe you can move a bit closer. We can only see your head quite small in the back.
Sorry.
No problem. Before we start into the panel discussion, let's maybe wind down a little bit and let me ask one or two follow-up questions after your presentation. Yesterday, I had a very interesting discussion in Brussels at the European Commission with one of the heads of policy in the DG Grow Directorate General. And, we all agreed that we need to accelerate the innovation debate and also innovation decisions in Europe and, of course, also beyond Europe. We talk about data today, and he made it clear that even though many things are possible, a few fundamentals are not debatable. The UI Data Act and the view the EU has on data sovereignty, or they perceive it as their core pillar. So also GDPR, even though it's cumbersome oftentimes for corporates, has been born out of this, let's say, viewpoint and perspective. So I guess if you debate data and you are very active with the German Ministry of Energy and Economics, etc., is this often an area where you need to clarify what is possible and what is kind of, let's say, out of scope or out of discussion? Or how advanced are decision makers in the thinking? Because I guess the regulatory debate on the one hand side and the debate that you are, let's say, calling us to start right now to upgrade fundamental infrastructure, it's of course a bit correlated. If you don't convince the one side, then the upgrade might not happen.
Yeah, so 2 days ago we had a dinner a dinner at the German Energy Agency, and it was a dinner where we talked to politicians, we talked to meaning a couple of scientists, people from industry, but mainly the addressees were from ministries and politicians. So yeah, I would say that indeed the main challenge here is clarifying concepts. It's definitely complex. So think about the different areas we are talking about here. When it comes to ESG, we talk about so many different domains in an industry. So from people, administration, over different sectors in the industry like energy, car industry, and so on. So transportation. And this is, if you then look who's responsible for what in a ministry today, it's totally fractionalized. And this means, yes, it's really a challenge. You have to talk 30 minutes and then you are really talking. I give you an example with artificial intelligence or large language models, machine learning, whatever, or you would call that. This was a topic 2 days ago, of course, in the energy sector as an example. And I wanted to make clear that this thing like Web3 or blockchain, on the one hand, and on the other hand, AI, you can make use of them both to enforce each other, but also they are counterweights. And this is very interesting. I mean, and we have to do this. We have to talk to politicians out there, and I think it's very fruitful, but challenging.
Yes, but it's part of what we are trying to do. But let's now open up and invite the other panelists. Let me introduce very quickly before giving the mic to each one of you. So we have Karolin Langfeldt from Circulor. We have Alex Bausch from the Netherlands, chairman and executive director of the Two Tokens Foundation. We have Quentin Cangelosi from Atmen. He's a co-founder and CTO. And we have Stefan Grüll, also a co-founder and CEO of S17 from Austria. Quentin is Français, of course, as you can see from the name, but he's very close to me here in Munich. So Atmen, formerly Point 12 Energy, has been set up in Munich and is supported by Unternehmertum, the public-private partnership of the top European university, the technical university we have in Munich. So I'm very pleased to have all of you here today. Most of you are around for quite a few years, evangelizing and trying to get not only the industry, but technologies that are new and promising going. So I'm looking forward to your introduction. And I would say, Karolin, I hope you don't mind, ladies first.
Hi, everyone. No, I don't mind at all. It's a pleasure to be here. And my name is Karolin Langfeldt, and I'm Business Development Director at Circulor. Our headquarters is in London, but I'm based in our German office, which is in Berlin. And yeah, we've been around since 2017, so quite a while. And we developed a solution, a traceability solution to track critical raw materials through complex industrial supply chains, working mainly in the automotive industry, all around electric batteries. And yeah, those critical raw materials we hear quite a lot about, like cobalt, nickel, lithium, etc. And so we're not only able to trace the materials, but we can also collect CO2 data along the supply chain.
Very interesting. And let's also not forget to talk about the strategic implications around raw material and rare earth. So very important going forward, because the political angle is always part of the discussion, I guess. Alex, you're back home in Rotterdam. You also had a workshop today at the University of Delft, where another one of two tokens projects has been introduced or shown to the world. So please let us know who you
Sebastian,
are.
thanks for having us. I'm the chairperson of the Two Tokens Foundation. We are a non-for-profit foundation that started in 2020 from the Netherlands, but we're focused on Europe. And we want to help institutions and entrepreneurs in their tokenization efforts. Yes, technology is important. More important is, what value does it bring? What is required in terms of value engineering, legal, regulatory, and most and foremost, what is needed for adoption? And so we do that through real working groups. We are now on working group number 9 or 10. But some of the working groups that we've worked on were, for instance, on energy tokenization in terms of assets, but also energy tokenization in terms of peer-to-peer energy exchange. And last year in August, we started a working group on carbon tokenization, and not so much carbon credits, carbon debits. No, we wanted to start, the first mandate was to use secure elements in the infrastructure so basically what we call carbon derived technology derived carbon credits from secure elements and crypto anchors. And so specifically as they are used in solar plants and windmills and everything. And Sebastian and I have been working on this for 3 years. And I like what you were saying, Jens, especially when it comes to solving the problem of double spend. So what we are focusing on is, how can you increase the tradability, increase transparency and trustworthiness, because that is a big issue, especially in the carbon market. So companies that work with us are from all over Europe. There are law firms, they are governments, but also companies like Shell, what have you. And and that is what we do. So we invite you to look at what we do, and that's why we partner up with the ESG partners, ESG Masters. Excuse me.
Thanks, Alex. And you're also an official European test bed, whatever that will mean in the future for your projects. So thank you. We'll talk more about hardware security. You mentioned secure elements, and I guess not everybody is familiar with the role of hardware here, but we need to fill the trust gap, as Jens told us in the beginning. And we will have a lot of machines participating in these end-to-end industrial processes, of course. So, Stefan, over to Vienna. I hope you are in Vienna today and not somewhere on the planet.
Yes, I'm here, and thank you for having me. So, my name is Stefan Grüll. I'm the founder and CEO of S17. We are a software and platform company. We are developing the digital material passport for steel, metals, and chemicals. So, we're also on the raw material side. I would say we're a bit more on the commodity side. Why these materials are so important when we talk about sustainability is simply because of their relevance. So if they're at the very beginning of almost every supply and value chain for the products that we use every day in our life, and overall steel, metals, chemicals, they account for roughly 20% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And what we are solving with the digital material passport is how this sustainability data for these materials can be actually shared alongside the supply chain. So the digital material passport is, let's say, the go-to solution to declare, share, and evidence both sustainability data, but also provenance and other quality attributes, from the very beginning to the final product, and hopefully in the future also along circular value chains.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Looking forward to the discussion. And last but not least, Quentin, please.
Thanks, Sebastian. Hi, everyone. I'm Quentin Cangelosi, or Quentin, as Sebastian rightfully said. I'm French, but I'm the CTO and co-founder of Atmen, which is, as explained already, based in Munich, Germany. Atmen is a SaaS platform that enables energy-intensive goods producers to easily and continuously certify their production as green or low carbon, saving up to 90% time in the process. And we are starting with a very specific market, which is a green hydrogen and e-fuels. Our solution, which is a mix of IoT and software, makes it easy for producers to prove the renewable origin of their energy, to quantify the carbon emissions based on operational data, so very relevant to what Jens was describing earlier, and most importantly, to obtain government-approved certificates and unlock the AS premium from it. We also support our customers before a production site is operational by running a pre-certification analysis to simulate energy flows, forecast carbon intensities, and to basically screen for compliance with a variety of certification standards and schemes. When it comes to CO2 management, we are also, as several panelists here, creating digital product passports that disclose the sustainability attributes of a given batch of molecules. So we said hydrogen, e-fuels, or a product. And what we observe is that thanks to the pressure from regulators and customers, there is an increasing need for granularity and accuracy into this carbon footprint information. And I think it ties us back to there is really a need for our backend, the backend of our economies, these registries, to actually become more compatible with these requirements for granularity. And that's what we do and what we fight for at Atmen. And we see the challenge between balancing with the current regulation and non-granular registries, and actually proving that it's possible to work on hourly granularity with small amounts of molecules being produced every hour. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Yeah.
Merci, Quentin. So we heard there are a number of solution providers that are not only around for a few months. Atmen is maybe the newest company in that setup, especially with the new branding that was launched a couple of weeks ago only. But we all know that the last few years have been challenging, but they also have been exceptional. We are certainly, or hopefully not always, going to have 2 years of a global pandemic situation, plus a war, plus an energy crisis. So the last 5 years, I think, have left their marks, but it has also meant that, the rush for sustainability technologies, the energy that should have been gone to fight against the global warming, has lost a bit of its importance. Hopefully not mid to long term, but short term, this was certainly the case. So this means we need to catch up now. We all saw the alarming numbers this year about the rise of the global temperature happening much sooner than expected. And we can also, or we should expect that there are tipping points and that this will not be a very linear curve that we are going to see. What we would like to try at ESG Masters is, as I said, zoom in a little bit, not only talk about solution A, B, and C, but also why you are choosing certain technology modules, why you are designing your processes the way you design them. Because in the end, we will have enough technology tools out there. We already have quite a lot today for different steps of the value chain. But the mastery behind all of this will be the orchestration. So how do I, as a CTO, as a board, how will I decide about the future backend, as you rightly said, Quentin, that will help us to work much more efficiently. And if we talk about technologies, especially different technologies, and if we want to trigger a debate that should have benefits cross industry, then of course we should not only talk about very technical details, but also about the capabilities. Why are we using certain technologies? So let's maybe try to frame or use this a little bit as reference points for this discussion. And let's start with the trust gap. Jens, and maybe one of the first questions to you, Alex, since you used it in your introduction, so I don't want to let the audience wait too long. Not everybody maybe has heard the term, but in the blockchain industry, we call it the Oracle problem. So we have this technology, it is cryptographically enhanced, and whatever is or has found its way into a blockchain is immutable. But the question is, how do we import real-world data into the blockchains? We've seen various ways to cheat real-world data, at least if it comes to, let's say, normal inspection. We are all still aware of the diesel scandal in the car industry. I guess, Quentin, you have worked as a data analyst, for example, with E.ON. Everybody knows about various ways. You know, the energy meters in the past have also been a source for, let's say, hackers. So we need to make sure that this gap is closed and that real-world data is accepted not only by two different business partners, but by regulators, by auditors, and by society. Because only if we have trusted data, then we can automate and have a basis for this kind of automation, and also payments or fines, whatever it is that comes out of the CO2 markets in the future. So the hardware discussion is of importance. And maybe you can let us understand a little bit, Alex, where you see the role of secure elements, which means high security hardware that we also see in credit card payment terminals, for example. And why is it not enough to just take, you know, the cloud data of enterprise A and match it with data out of the infrastructure or company B and then come to a conclusion?
Well, those are a lot of questions, but let me just start that 3 years ago, we started with the energy tokenization working group, and we came to the conclusion that we needed to have something that was more than just a smart meter, right? Because it turns out that in certain countries where the smart meter is implemented, the smart meter could in fact be, you could manipulate the data. So, which gave cost to implement, a digital twin, if you will, of the system, and which we started doing. So we added what we call secure elements to the infrastructure that basically copied everything that was already there from the smart meter and the digital infrastructure, but now we would have it from a secondary sensor, which is digital twin, and we call that a secure element or a crypto anchor. And so if you look at all the devices that are out there, all the devices in the edge, we call it, all these devices are in fact smart devices. So it's, whether it's a smart meter or it's a sensor or it's a solar panel, all those panels, all those devices will need some sort of an identifier, and a unique identifier that belongs only to that device. And as soon as you have that in place, then you can tokenize that data, and you can be assured that that the data from that panel is that panel. So that's how we implement it for the energy tokenization. So if you then tokenize the kilowatt hour, you can also tokenize the data or tokenize the carbon offset. So that's how we got into this carbon working group, because you want to have assurance that that device is actually the device that it says it is, and that you can trust the data. And yeah.
That means that you use, let's say, cybersecurity hardware to provide a given identity to a machine or a measurement device or a smart meter. And then you have a machine identifier that you can match with data. But let's be clear here. If we have a crypto chip, which is, of course, also costing money and also consuming CO2 during its production, if we upgrade our hardware infrastructure out there, then this is just the first step. We will also need to monitor the monitoring and repair cycle of devices. So if the calibration is wrong of a smart meter, then all the crypto identity is not helping you. You will still have data that is not necessarily accurate. And this is also part of the registry discussion, and maybe the question to you, Jens. In the end, we have authorities in different countries. In Germany, it's the BSI, the Bundesamt für Sicherheit in der Informationstechnologie, and they are responsible for the certification of these new devices. And especially in Germany, we didn't really have let's say, a great streak in certifying the last generation of smart meters. So how can we prevent that we end up in a certification loop and lose again another number of years until we get to a more powerful, more secure, more reliable army or fleet of data source providers, if we include the hardware in the equation?
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about greenfields with registries, of course, we all have good ideas, and we could start from scratch and say, okay, let's do it in the best way we can think of. Yeah, and we have all ideas, as I said, no problem at all. The real challenge, of course, is what do we do on a brownfield here approach, or with a brownfield approach? So, and I think we have to find out how can we still work on a goal. What is a perfect or an ideal system we want to have? Yes, that's good. We need a reference point here. But on the other side, we have to look at the situation we face today. And this means, for instance, you mentioned smart meters, or the situation in Germany with registries. We have asset registries. We have, so one solution could be like flexible authority models. So meaning that somebody like a DSO, distribution grid operator, could be responsible to say, okay, I give you this the right with a certificate. I give you the right to be, for instance, to take part in this special market for just an hour or so. And of course, we need a couple of things here. I already mentioned the knowledge proofs. They could be very, very interesting here, because you just could limit the rights to one attribute, for instance. This would be very helpful, and also for just in a certain time period. And yeah, so authority models could be a good way to start with. But yeah, we have to, there's no way around it. We have to modernize the registries, and also how can we combine them. But this is all only the master data, right? So what about the transaction data here, if you want to use them in different areas? And there we have to come up with standards. And as we all know, this takes a lot of time. Yeah, we have to work on that. but still interoperability comes first in my sense. So there we can start much more quickly.
Let's talk about
Yeah,
authority.
and I think, Jens, I agree with you. The standards is very are difficult, right? But standards are only as good as the people that use them, right? So we can define standards, but an IEEE, ISO, whatever, nobody uses them. What good is standard? So we try to be, we try not to be a think tank, but a do tank. So let's just try to implement. So here in the Port of Rotterdam, for instance, there's a project on HydroTwin where they're tagging green and blue and gray hydrogen. You know, you need a product passport and you need secure elements. You know, you need to be sure that you can trust that data. So, but you have to start somewhere. You know, at some point, time is running out, and we need to just start experimenting. And not everything will work, but if we fail fast, move on. That would be my approach. But you know, who am I?
Regulation will come anyway. The question is when to regulate, but nothing speaks against, let's say, trials and to move on with the private sector. Karolin, over to you. And one question from me to you would be, because Jens mentioned the authority models, if we talk about the raw material supply chains, it's of course a bit more problematic. You don't have a machine at the beginning that you can, equip with secure elements. You have people digging sometimes in unworthy circumstances for materials, and of course also machines. So what could authority mean in the context, and how do you establish trust in your supply chains?
Yeah, thank you. Like, first of all, what Jens said really resonated to me. So like facing the situation we have today, as well as interoperability, I think is key for us. Exactly, because we work under the circumstances you mentioned, Sebastian. So we work with global supply chains. We work with supply chains participants which sit all over the globe, which are from small level to conglomerates, and which have like a very different level of technical expertise and technical readiness. So we really have to work with what we find in each company. And yeah, just like to give you a range of like how we receive data. This can be via our mobile application. This can be via an Excel sheet. Sometimes this is like via a call. Sometimes we get it via APIs, and sometimes via EDC. So it really, we have to take what we get because we are at the beginning of the journey when it comes to supply chain transparency. But how do we make sure that the data we receive is secure, is authentic, is correct? So like we use a variety of technologies to make sure that we get the most detailed, the most correct data. And we also work on the ground with auditing companies. So we need like this double security check. Like once the data we collect, and then once like people, auditing companies we work with, auditing companies our customers work with, who can then verify. Does this answer your question?
Sure, it's part of the answer. We all know that we are still at the beginning. That's why the title is From CO2 Counting. I guess that's a good description of the phase we are in, getting data together, raising awareness about data quality, and also about the data management capabilities and infrastructural realities that we have. You wanted to say something else? Otherwise, I would switch to Konta for the next question. Konta, in the hydrogen, I wanted to say department, but in the hydrogen sector, we all know that there are high hopes, even though we all are aware that this will also mean an infrastructure upgrade and build out. So where do you fit in? I guess it's maybe a bit less complicated than for raw materials that come out of different mines around the globe, because you will have a few, let's say, more central production points. But what's the best way, and how are technologies used to create trustworthy data for hydrogen provenance?
Yes, and maybe just to come back a bit on the original question and the original point from Alex with crypto assets and secure elements. I do think that, as Jens actually mentioned today, a lot of data is actually collected manually, or there is a human in the process who is actually able to corrupt the data. And this is where we do see the value, even if there might be some controversies of actually having these crypto elements that actually secure the data at the root. So that's from the measurement, from the with a secure identity of the asset. So here we talk about electrolyzer plants producing hydrogen or producing electricity, renewable electricity. We need to have this in place, and it's already a big improvement, I would say, from what is currently happening. And second reason is actually the auditing process. So today, the verification process is very old school. So it's it actually doesn't scale with the new requirements. Today it's going to be, it's done yearly, and it needs to be tomorrow, I mean, not tomorrow, but soon, done on the hourly level. And in that case, there is no human that is going to be able, especially as we go in a decentralized world, right, where it's not going to be, the energy is going to be more and more decentralized. This is not going to scale the way we are doing today. And this is why we need a new way of verifying and measuring the data in a secure way. And I think it goes with first an hardware that secures the data at the roots, and then all of the processes needs to be made tamper-proof. So notarization is one way, and then there are ways also to detect if there is measurements which are going out of calibration. We could think about AI here coming into play. And yeah, I think on the hydrogen side, what is very critical is that we have one molecule which is, we cannot say from this molecule what is its origin and what is the carbon content, and this can have a huge difference from being produced with electricity coming from the German grid mix or coming from an actual renewable plant. It has a huge impact. It's 4 times more polluting if you were just to plug like the electrolyzer on the grid mix today in Germany. And this is why it's very important to track the attributes of the electricity and make sure that they are actually also following the physics. It's like we need to understand that today we are still matching our renewable electricity on a yearly or monthly level, and we really need to look at a granular level, which is hourly. And yeah, I think these are challenges that we are facing today in the hydrogen sector, which are very prominent and will actually help move forward in the entire economy, I believe.
Maybe Stefan, switching over to you, and we can talk a little bit with all of us about the journey. I think when we first met, must have been 5 years ago, we were also having this discussion about hardware security as a root of trust in the production process for steel, for example. In the meantime, I think you and your team, you have iterated a bit because it was easier, especially when, let's say, the reputation of blockchain-based solution was going down due to the scams in the crypto industry that have nothing to do with what we discuss here. I hope that's clear to everybody. But of course, it had an impact on decision makers that are often not very knowledgeable about technologies. And maybe you can tell us a little bit how you switched a little bit to, a pitch where you help companies to more efficiently handle data and certificates, and where the technology is not the first discussion point. Let's talk about machine readability, etc., because we all know we will not create a net zero world tomorrow, but we can find different ways to achieve 10, 20, or 30% of savings. So let's talk about the operational part as it is today, and which are the most relevant aspects from your point of view, and where do you see blockers from your experience with customers such as, I don't know, BASF or steel and metal producers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the key challenge and also design principle in our solution was, of course, scalability, because when we speak about connecting the, let's say, material and industrial supply chain, so we talk about roughly 500,000 companies in Europe, and globally it's about 10 times the number. So our key question was always on how can we actually onboard such many companies to a new technology. And here we learned that we have to follow a staged approach, and that has a number of implications. So first of all, built, or we decided, or we learned that we have to leverage on already existing standards and also existing processes of how data is already exchanged. And let me explain this a little bit, because when we talk about industrial materials, sharing data is nothing new because of, regulatory requirements. Since 40 years, we are sharing quality data with each and every batch that is actually moving in the supply chain. And this is what we understood as a starting point. And our goal number one is to replace paper and PDF certificates with machine readable data. And of course, we use cryptography and we use hash technologies in order to provide immutability to this data. And the second thing is it was also addressed already by some of the other panelists. So it helped us also to have, let's say, reference points or oracles in the non-digital world, because we could base on the existing regulation that says, for instance, there is an audited and accredited laboratory that is allowed to issue a certificate. So in the future, we can use these reference points also to bring more data on these certificates, like product carbon footprint data and recycling contents. And when it comes then to, that helps us really to onboard people, because, we onboard them by simply making the existing and quite cumbersome process just more efficient. We make it digital, we make it, we can help them to automate these things. And then later, of course, with the same channel, we can exchange more data. And when it comes to technology, I think the key is, for instance, with blockchain, you at the end of the day, it all depends on your integration capabilities. So here we learned, for instance, that the data that we want to transport more or less sits within legacy systems, like enterprise resource planning systems, manufacturing execution systems. So we build out this integration. So here we work very closely also with SAP, who is a very important player in that market, and that helps also companies to onboard new technologies. Basically, they don't have to deal with new technology. They have an interface that they know. They have an add-on that is fully certified, that can be very simply implemented, and that's actually how we approach that topic. And then once you have, let's say, the sender and the receiver on the blockchain, of course, you can do all of the fancy things like digital assets and on-chain transfer, but that takes a bit of time.
Karolin, one question to you. You mentioned different technologies and different approaches to verify and double check data. How do you screen for technologies? We all know that AI has been around for 15 plus years at least, but of course last year, as a bit of a surprise for the general public, ChatGPT all of a sudden triggered a wave that has now reached, let's say, the political leadership, etc. So what does make a piece of technology interesting for you? Is it very much use case driven? Do you work with partners, I don't know, for optical recognition or whatever tools you use, or how are you achieving progress for your solutions, for your ecosystem?
We also do work with partners, but it's very much use case driven, because we trace different materials and it's different supply chains. So we always really need to look at what are the risks of the supply chains, what are the risks of the raw materials, what are the regulatory requirements, so which data do we need to collect. And once we know how the risks look like and which data we need, we then look at how to collect the data and what is the most efficient way, but also the most secure way to get the data, and also considering the conditions which we find on the ground, what is suitable. Okay,
perfect. Let's also talk about how those solutions are proliferated. You with Circulor are also part of Catena X, it has been mentioned before, which is a growing consortium in the automotive industry that is tracking data along the supply chain. down to, let's say, scope 3 in the end. That's where we need to go. So, you know, I've been part for a couple of months of Catena X, but of course I'm following it ever since. So is this approach to combine, let's say, private sector companies to also help drive the standardization, is this successful, or are there too many or many compromises on the way, or how do you see this whole, let's say, development that is happening under the Gaia X umbrella, which was, of course, a political initiative at the beginning? How is it progressing? What can you, let's say, tell us?
Well, first of all, I think it's too early to judge if Catena X is a success and will be a success. But I think it's a great initiative. But I don't know, like one of the other participants also mentioned that standards can be an enabler, but also can be a blocker. So like if we develop standards which nobody uses, then it more blocks our work than enables it. So I think really the following month and years to come will show the outcome of Catena X. Like for now, I think it would be definitely facilitate our work if we have certain standards and data exchange. But what we can see, for example, also in the market is that some companies are hesitant to act now because they are waiting for certain data standards to be released. So, you know, we see positive impacts of Catena X as well as negative impacts. What I personally welcome is like the industry, the automotive industry, not only in Germany, but also in Europe and now also in other countries coming together and working jointly on those topics.
Thank you. I guess waiting, we've heard this or discussed this, is not really an option. Jens, maybe one question to you. I guess also within the Fraunhofer community, you're, let's say, faced with all kinds of innovation in your daily work. Is there also still a big discussion ongoing about the use of certain technologies and how to orchestrate it? Or do we have more, let's say, common ground and consensus in the scientific part of, let's say, this equation?
I mean, I'm a researcher by nature, so we have to try things. And of course, there are always debates what's okay and what's not. So when it comes to AI, I think this is a big thing right now, definitely. So it's groundbreaking. And I mean, just to give you an example about the dimension, I don't know if all the people are familiar with that, but for instance, when it comes to speech recognition, copying your voice, 1 year ago, you needed, or the best models, trained models, needed 30 minutes, a record of 30 minutes of your voice to totally copy in a perfect way your voice. Now, really, it's true. You just need seconds or even a word after 1 year. So this is, whoa, unbelievable. And yeah, this is where we have a lot of thinking, and that's good because this means you really have to be sure, was it really a ChatGPT 3 or 4 you were talking to, or who was it? Was the data changed on the way? Who is asking, who's sending the request, etc., etc. So, and the data, where did the data come from, the data set that you used for training the model? And there we see that I already mentioned that for instance, blockchain and Web3 and AI are perfect, can play a perfect, or can end up in a perfect synergy, and they are kind of counterweight then, because with a decentralized technology, you really fight the monopolistic tendency there. And yeah, and still it means right now, who has the most of the data, the biggest, the largest data sets, you are number one in the market. That's the situation today, but this can change even. And as we just heard from Karolin, I mean, with data spaces, etc., you can make use of data sets, you can tag data sets, share the data between parties in industries, and keep data sovereignty. And this is large, and that's really from my perspective a big opportunity for Europe, because we have those technologies right now. We are working on that. So I think it's good that we have invested the time to come up with things like data spaces now. Definitely.
Yeah. Coming back to your example in the AI space, I guess the dangers, but also the benefits, especially in media production, are obvious. But also, to support our daily work, scrolling papers and get a nice excerpt. But I guess the use of AI is also quite obvious to most of us if it comes to improve the quality of coding, in the medical sector. What's a good use case example that you see, or maybe also to you, Kanta, in the energy sector? Where can AI help us? Where do you see a similar potential as getting from 30 minutes to 3 seconds to complete a task or emulate a certain question?
I mean, I can start. So I think I do see a vision where we actually have assets going on autopilot with AI. So today, there is I was mentioning, right, there is a requirement that we need to really look at the physicality of where is renewable electricity, where is the electricity coming from. And from that, we need to actually be able to steer the whole industry, the whole plants which are running, or the EVs that Jens was mentioning. And here AI could actually come into play and be the orchestrator of these steering machines. So that could be one thing. And I mean, there are many applications which are already today made, which are forecasting, predictive analytics, detecting frauds, for example, in transactions. So I think, no one knows what AI will uncover, but I really believe that there will be more and more automation and machines running on autopilots once we have secured both on the blockchain side, maybe secured the identity, allowed certain parameters to be controlled by an agent. I really see this coming in the future.
Okay, so let's, before closing, differentiate a bit. What's the summary of this discussion today? So I think we learned that trust is key, that there are intelligent ways to orchestrate identities, trust the data sets, and use this to achieve an impact. But we also learned it will be easier and maybe more secure in a machine-to-machine environment, both because of the autopiloting example that you just mentioned, but also because of trust. And where human intervention is needed, it will be a bit more complicated. Of course, humans can be corrupted, but also humans make errors from time to time. So let's maybe, as a last part of today, talk about tokenization, Alex. You mentioned the working groups you have and the activities, and I would be interested in two things. You're not only having energy companies and city councils into tokens, but also a quite impressive number of banks. So let's maybe talk for 2 minutes about the intersection of the financial industry as a driver, and then how tokens can be used to incentivize both B2B and B2C, because we need accelerators to drive those transitions. So maybe if you can talk a bit about the capabilities of tokens, utility or industry tokens in that context, and how you judge the last 2, 3, 4 years of not only research, but also, test runs and MVPs.
Yeah, thank you. So tokenization is, I guess, the most underestimated movement, and what we see is in the Two Tokens Foundation, we have working groups that are not just technical people, the techies, of course. We started this for techies with techies. No, it also involves other disciplines, right? A lot of lawyers, a lot of finance people, people from legal regulatory. So if anything, and tokenization, by the way, is also something that is not understood very well. digitization, digital economy is actually fueled by tokenization. So yes, you have tokens that can represent a digital asset, a real world asset, and it can be a security. But there are, there's a multifold of tokens that have nothing to do with finance, but are used for proof of existence or for voting or what have you. The fact of the matter is, if we accelerate this digitization movement that we're in, and we're going to need tokenization in some way, shape, or form. And what we with 2 tokens do is always start with the value engineering. What is the value that you try to pass between stakeholders, and only then do we start looking at the definition of a token. So going back to energy, there were a lot of questions of what that meant, and so we presented at the biggest energy show in Paris last November at NLIT. We have to change the narrative. A lot of people, have lost what we're talking about. So tokenization doesn't mean anything. Yet at an energy show, if you tell them that you help solve energy poverty, if you want to share energy with energy communities, local for local, then people get it, and with that come the solutions. And the same goes for carbon and ESG solutions. So I know this doesn't really answer your question because you had multiple questions, but that is what we are running into. And so what we see is, as we went along this road, we started in 2019, 2020, we slowly had to change the narrative and the song that we're singing, because there is so much complexity and there's so much happening over different sectors. Education and upskilling is a big thing, and you can only do that by just tackling the applications that are at hand, and that is what we've been trying to do.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alex. Let's maybe use a question from Indira Bunic as the closing question. It's one for all of us, and if everybody could take 1 or 2 minutes also summarizing your work and the discussion. So the question is quite a general one. So Alex, you will like it. How can we take the ESG strategy, meaning also the strategy discussion, to the next level? What is needed and which are the drivers from your perspective? Is it the financial industry? Is it the regulatory framework? Or is it rather private sector initiatives? Or will it be driven by tech and techies, as Alex said?
So I was talking. I don't think you can say one or the other. We all have to work together, and we're going to a decentralized society. So we need to come together and have solutions from all three. Including science, including the business, including legal regulatory. Unfortunately, most of our legal regulatory laws that are out there were developed in the last 100, 200 years. So and it takes time. By default, the regulations, go past, slowly catching up with the developments out there, and you see that. So should we change that? I think it starts with the people, and it starts with educating people on the solutions that we can deliver today. I know it sounds very esoteric, but we need to have more people that have this holistic view, and not only have this a discussion of the techies, because then we lose 90% of society. That's just my 2 cents, And so how do we do this? By just working on use cases and just simple solutions. Just do it. Let's not talk about it. Let's do it.
Very well said. And that's why we rely on you guys in the Netherlands. You have brought global trade and, today's form of capitalism to the world. So maybe you will also, again, be a driver of how we do business in the next few hundred years. Stefan, you're next, at least from my point of view here in the Zoom. So please.
Yeah, I think the answer is partly yes, we need data that is auditable and it is verifiable. And then I think in the next step, we have a chance to apply procedures for carbon accounting that we have developed in the last 100 years for financial accounting. So probably we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take these processes that are reliable, that are also trusted, and move fast.
Moving fast is a good thing. Jens, what can the R&D and the universities contribute, and also Fraunhofer, to moving fast?
I hope a lot, but to pick one thing here, I think there's always a trade-off between transparency for track and trace versus anonymity requirements. So when it comes to, of course, competitors, privacy, and I think this is something that we have to solve in general. So decentralized elements in the ecosystem, in the economy, I think it's time now to implement that. Yeah, and I think we can contribute here.
Anta, your view about how to get to the next level of the ESG debate?
Yes, I think a lot of it was said, but I do believe that regulators have a very important role to play, because this is a very global problem, and they have to force the industry to actually decarbonize. But secondly, we also need pioneers and people and companies showing that this is possible technologically, that we have all of the tools to actually be able to trace carbon in a very accurate and granular way. And I think that's why we need a combination of all of this.
And thanks a lot. Closing with the lady in the round, Karolin.
What an honor. I started and I'm closing. Yeah, what can I say? I mean, I agree with all of you. I think I see a push, or I hope there's a push coming from different directions. So big hope first from technology. I mean, like what we can do now, so tracing critical raw materials, tracking CO2 emissions, this is something which we weren't able to do a few years ago. And so like technology is advancing with this, our capabilities, and I think we just need to apply them right. Then another big hope I have for regulations, and this is something we see like in the area I work, like with the European battery regulation, so which is which was placed on the market in 2024, and like compliance starts in 2025. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge shift in how companies operate and how they get ready to share data. And this goes beyond Europe, because they need data from all the suppliers along the supply chain who also sit in different regions in the world. And it was a big issue to get data from them in the past. But now there's a driver behind it. They have requests not only from one company, but from various companies coming in. And so like there is a huge change, which we see. And then last but not least, I always have my hopes on industrial leaders. So companies who guide by example, who show that, sustainability and that leading with responsibility is possible.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a very good closing remark. Of course, we will also have those industry leaders in our, or speaking at our April conference. It wasn't, let's say, purpose by design that we more have the vendor and advanced solution providers today in this round. But we wanted to focus on the question, where are we and how can we progress? How can we upgrade registries? Which kind of process designs and technical modules are available? How do the experts in this field see the evolution right now? So I think it was a good starting point for our ESG Masters discussion platform. We hope to see more of you in the next webinars. Announcements will follow soon. Follow our LinkedIn page and also our website, but most of you that are here today will have seen that. We will also ask you to suggest topics and also topics for webinars in the future, because we need to have an interactive discussion. This was a starting point today. There's only so much you can do in 90 minutes. That's why we know that, today's conference and meeting in person will add a lot of benefit, but I guess we're all used to digital in the meantime. And also here are some ways how we can be more energy efficient. So sorry for using virtual backgrounds today. If you stream without any backgrounds, it's 4 times more energy efficient. So that's also part of the reality. But yeah, sometimes there's sacrifice for branding and creating awareness. So I hope you forgive us. That's all for today. I hope you have a nice evening. See you soon. And we will certainly spread also more information about the front runners, about components, etc. So we are working on various fronts to help to accelerate this movement that is so dearly needed. So thank you, goodbye, and see you soon.